Dr. Jaiho Park had seen many strange things in his 20 years as a geneticist, but nothing like this. He stared at the blood sample results on his computer screen, then looked at them again. Something was changing in human DNA, and it was happening fast. It had started 3 months ago with reports of children developing unusual skin patches. At first, doctors thought it was a new kind of rash. But when 7-year-old Mina Lee came to the Seoul Institute of Evolution with shimmering blue-green patches along her spine, Dr. Park knew this was different. The scales appeared 2 weeks ago, Mina's mother told him, her hands shaking as she held her daughter's medical file. They don't hurt her. They just grow. Dr. Park nodded and carefully touched one of the scales. It felt smooth and warm, like polished metal that had been sitting in the sun. Mina giggled. "They tickle when you touch them," she said with a bright smile, showing no fear of her transformation. That had been the first case. Now, 3 months later, children all over the world were developing similar changes. Dr. Park's office walls were covered with photos and charts tracking the spread. He had barely slept in weeks, trying to understand what was happening to humanity. His phone rang, making him jump. It was his colleague, Dr. Hui-jin from the Children's Hospital. "Jaiho, you need to come here right now." Hui-jin's voice was urgent. "Remember how we thought the changes would stop at scales? Well, we were wrong. Very wrong." 30 minutes later, Dr. Park stood in a hospital room, watching a 10-year-old boy named Tae-sung. The child was sleeping peacefully, but what Dr. Park saw made his heart race. Small, curved horns were growing from Tae-sung's forehead. They were smooth and dark, with hints of gold when the light hit them. "They started growing yesterday," Hae-jin whispered. His parents thought they were bumps at first. This morning, they broke through the skin. It didn't hurt him at all. He slept through the whole thing. Dr. Park took out his tablet and started making notes. "Any other changes?" "Look at his hands." When Dr. Park gently lifted the blanket, he saw that Tae-sung's fingernails had changed too. They were thicker, curved, and had a metallic shine. They looked like small claws. "We need to call an emergency meeting," Dr. Park said, his voice steady despite his racing thoughts. "And we need to tell the world. This isn't just a few random cases anymore. Humanity is changing." That evening, as news stations around the world broadcast images of transformed children, Dr. Park sat in his quiet office, looking at DNA models spinning on his screen. The changes weren't harmful. In fact, every transformed child seemed healthier than before. Their bones were stronger, their immune systems more powerful, and their senses sharper. But the biggest mystery was in their genetic code. The changes looked natural, as if this was how humans were meant to evolve all along. It wasn't like a virus or a mutation. Instead, it was as if someone had simply pressed fast forward on human evolution. As Dr. Park prepared for the biggest press conference of his life, he looked at a photo of Mina on his desk. She was smiling, her scales catching the light like jewels. Despite all his years of scientific training, he couldn't help but feel that this was more than just random evolution. Something or someone had awakened something in humanity's DNA. And this was just the beginning. Looking at the latest worldwide reports, Dr. Park knew that tomorrow would bring more changes, more transformations, more questions. But for the first time in his career, he wasn't afraid of the unknown. Instead, he felt a strange sense of excitement. Humanity was about to become something new, something more. And he would be there to document every amazing step of the journey. 10 years had passed since the first scales appeared. Hae-nul Kim stood in front of her mirror, admiring how the morning sunlight played across her metallic scales. At 17, she was part of what people called the first generation. Children who had grown up with their bodies changing in wonderful new ways. Her horns curved elegantly above her forehead, their dark surface showing hints of gold and silver. They had grown slowly over the years, becoming a natural part of her appearance. Her claws, which she could now extend and retract at will, gleamed like polished steel. "Hae-nul, "You'll be late for the documentation session," her mother called from downstairs. The Seoul Institute of Evolution had been tracking Haenul's development since she was 7. She didn't mind. She was proud to help scientists understand what was happening to her generation. Besides, Dr. Park had always been kind to her. At the institute, Haenul sat in the familiar testing room. The walls were covered with photos showing how children like her had changed over the years. She recognized herself in many of them. "Ready to try something new today?" Dr. Park asked, walking in with his tablet. His hair had more gray now, but his eyes still showed the same excitement they had 10 years ago. "What kind of test?" Haenul asked, curious. "We've noticed that your generation's scales aren't just for protection. We think they might have other properties. Would you like to help us find out what they can do?" The next hour was amazing. They discovered that Haenul could control the color of her scales, changing them from their natural silver to darker shades when she concentrated. It was like having a built-in camouflage system. "This is incredible," Dr. Park said, recording everything. "Can you feel anything when you change their color?" "It's like flexing a muscle I didn't know I had," Haenul explained. "The more I practice, the easier it gets." Later that day, Haenul met her friends at their favorite cafe. Yoo-jin and Do-ha were also part of the first generation. Yoo-jin's horns were shorter but branched like a crown, while Do-ha's scales had a unique pattern that looked like waves. "Watch this," Haenul said, showing them her new color-changing ability. Her friends gasped as her scales shifted from silver to deep blue. "That's amazing," Yoo-jin exclaimed. "I wonder what else we can do." They spent the afternoon sharing their discoveries. Yoo-jin had found she could sense approaching storms through her horns. Do-ha's claws could cut through materials that normal knives couldn't touch. That evening, Haenul wrote in her blog. She had been documenting her transformation journey for years, helping other changed children understand what was happening to them. Her blog had millions of followers around the world. "Today we learned something new about our scales," she wrote. "Every day we discover more about what we can do. Some people are still afraid of how we look, but we're not monsters. We're just the next step in human evolution. We're stronger, yes, but we're still human where it matters most, in our hearts." As she finished writing, Haenul got a message from Dr. Park. "Tomorrow will be different," it said. "We have visitors coming to the Institute, important visitors. They're very interested in meeting the first generation." Haenul looked at her reflection in the window. Her scales shimmed in the evening light, and her horns cast interesting shadows on the wall. She smiled, feeling proud of who she was becoming. Whatever tomorrow brought, she and her generation would face it together. Little did she know that tomorrow's visitors would change everything they thought they knew about their transformation. The day the aliens arrived started like any other at the Seoul Institute of Evolution. Haenul was showing Dr. Park how she could now change her scale colors faster than ever. Dr. Taewon Lee, the Institute's new xenobiologist, was updating his research notes. Nobody expected the sky to turn purple. It happened at exactly 2:15 p.m. A massive ship appeared above Seoul, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. It was bigger than any building humans had ever made. The ship hung silently in the air, casting a shadow over the city. "Everyone stay calm," Dr. Park announced as the Institute's emergency lights began flashing. He looked at Haenul, who stood near the window, her scales unconsciously shifting to match the purple sky. "Whatever happens next, we face it together." The alien ship sent down a beam of light that touched the ground right in front of the Institute. From this light stepped 3 tall figures. They looked almost human, except their skin was pale blue and they had marks that looked like circuits running across their faces. Dr. Lee rushed to the entrance hall. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, he had spent years preparing for first contact, but nothing had prepared him for what happened next. The alien spoke perfect Korean. "We are the Syndicate," the tallest alien said, looking around the room with glowing eyes. "We have been watching your transformation with great interest. But the aliens stopped speaking when they saw Hanul. Hanul stood straight, trying to look brave even though her heart was racing. The alien walked closer, studying her scales, horns, and claws with obvious surprise. "Impossible," the alien whispered. "You achieved naturally what took our species 10,000 years of genetic engineering to create." They touched their own arm, and their skin shifted color, just like Hanul's scales could. Dr. Lee stepped forward. "I am Dr. Tawan Lee, Earth's xenobiologist. We welcome you to our planet. Would you tell us more about what you mean?" The aliens explained that they were part of a galactic community called the Syndicate. They had been watching Earth for centuries, expecting humans to develop like other species. But something unexpected had happened. The human transformation had taken a path that no other species had achieved naturally. "We have questions," the alien leader said. "Many questions. How did your species achieve this perfect adaptation? Why did it happen so quickly? And most importantly," they paused, looking at Hanul again, "why are your abilities already more advanced than ours?" Dr. Park shared the data they had collected over the past 10 years. The aliens studied everything with growing amazement. They explained that most species in the galaxy had to use technology to achieve what humans had gained naturally. As the day went on, more people gathered at the Institute. News of the alien arrival spread across the world. But the biggest surprise came when the aliens revealed why they had really come to Earth. "Your species has done something remarkable," the alien leader said. "You have shown that natural evolution can surpass artificial enhancement. This changes everything we thought we knew about development. The Syndicate wishes to learn from you." Hanul looked at Dr. Park and Dr. Lee, then back at the aliens. "We're willing to share what we know," she said, her scales shifting to a confident gold color. "But we have questions too. Many questions." The alien leader nodded. "Then let us learn from each other. But be warned, not everyone in the galaxy will be happy about your achievements. Some will see you as a threat." As the sun set on this historic day, humans and aliens began their first diplomatic talks. Nobody knew it yet, but this was just the beginning of humanity's greatest challenge. Captain Sun Mi Kang stood at attention in the United Earth Council chamber. Her scales gleamed under the bright lights, and her horns, longer than most, curved elegantly above her head. As the leader of Earth's first transformed space fleet, she knew the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The Syndicate's ambassador stood before the council, explaining the galactic hierarchy. "Every species must prove their worth through the ancient trials," the ambassador said. "This is how we maintain order in the galaxy. It is our oldest tradition." Dr. Tawan Lee, now Earth's chief negotiator, frowned. "And if we refuse these trials? Then Earth will be classified as a developing world," the ambassador replied. "You will not be permitted to lead your solar system. You will have no voice in galactic matters. No trade rights. No access to advanced technology." The council chamber erupted in whispers. Captain Kang stepped forward. "Tell us about these trials," she said, her voice steady and clear. The trials, it turned out, were tests of both physical and mental abilities. Each species had to prove they could use their evolutionary advantages wisely. The trials had been designed millions of years ago by a race now long gone from the galaxy. 3 trials, the ambassador explained. First, the trial of strength, where you must demonstrate your physical capabilities. Second, the trial of wisdom, where you prove your ability to solve complex problems. Third, the trial of unity, where your species must work together in perfect harmony. Several council members argued that Earth should wait, prepare more, study the trials before attempting them. But Captain Kang saw something in the ambassador's eyes. Respect, perhaps, or curiosity about what humans could do. "I volunteer to lead our trial team," Captain Kang announced. The chamber fell silent. Our transformation wasn't just physical. It changed how we think, how we work together. "We're ready," Dr. Lee tried to object. "Sun Mi, We don't know enough about these trials. They could be dangerous. Everything important is dangerous, she replied. But look at how far we've come in just 10 years. We've mastered our new abilities. We've built ships that work with our transformed bodies. We've united Earth like never before. She turned to face the council. I say we show the galaxy what humans can do. The ambassador seemed pleased. The trials will begin in 1 Earth month. You may select your team. Captain Kang already knew who she wanted. Hae-Nul Kim, whose scale-shifting abilities had grown even stronger. Yu-Jin, who could now sense danger through her horns. Du-Ha, whose claws could cut through almost any material. And 5 others, each with unique abilities that had developed beyond what anyone thought possible. That evening, Captain Kang met with her chosen team in the new Space Command Center. The room's windows looked out over the massive ships they had built, ships designed to work with their transformed bodies, with control systems that responded to their scales and claws. The galaxy thinks they know what we can do, she told her team. They think they understand human limits, but they've never seen anything like us. She smiled, her scales shifting to a confident gold color. We're going to show them that humanity's strength isn't just in our horns, claws, and scales. It's in our spirit. As her team began training for the trials, news spread across Earth. Humanity was about to face its greatest test, but unknown to Captain Kang and her team. Some members of the syndicate were already working to ensure they would fail. Do-Hyun Choi worked late into the night at the Seoul Institute of Evolution. As a young scientist studying alien technology, he had access to the database the syndicate had shared with Earth. Something about their story didn't make sense to him, and he was determined to find out what it was. The laboratory was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. Do-Hyun's scales reflected the blue light from his screens, creating patterns on the walls. He had been comparing the syndicate's evolution records with Earth's transformation data for weeks. Computer, show me the pattern analysis again, he said, rubbing his tired eyes. The screen filled with charts showing how different species had evolved across the galaxy. Then he saw it, a pattern so obvious he wondered how everyone had missed it. This can't be right, he whispered. He checked the data again and again. The evidence was clear. The syndicate had been secretly guiding the evolution of species throughout the galaxy. They weren't just observers. They were conducting experiments. Do-Hyun's hands shook as he downloaded the evidence to his secure tablet. He needed to show this to Dr. Park and Captain Kang right away. But as he turned to leave, his horns tingled with a warning sensation. Someone else was in the laboratory. Impressive work, young scientist, a voice said from the shadows. A tall syndicate member stepped into the light. It was not the friendly ambassador they had come to know, but someone new. Someone whose eyes held no warmth. The syndicate has run these experiments for thousands of years, the alien said. We guide species toward useful forms. We control their development. But humans, the alien's face showed a mix of anger and fear. Humans were different. You tried to control our evolution, Do-Hyun said, understanding finally coming to him. But it didn't work the way you planned. The alien nodded. We introduced the catalyst that started your transformation. It should have taken centuries. You should have developed slowly under our guidance. Instead, your species changed in just 10 years. You grew stronger than we ever intended. Do-Hyun's mind raced. The trials. They're not really about proving ourselves, are they? They're about controlling us. Smart boy, the alien said, stepping closer. The trials let us limit species that grow too powerful. But your Captain Kang has ruined that plan by accepting them too early. Now we must find another way to contain humanity. Do-Hyun knew he had to warn the others. His claws extended instinctively as the alien reached for him. But before either could move, the laboratory doors burst open. Captain Kang stood there, her scales glowing with a fierce light. Step away from our scientist, she commanded. Behind her stood her trial team, their horns and claws gleaming in the dim light. The alien backed away. You're too late. The Syndicate already knows humans are too dangerous. The trials will proceed, but they will be modified. You cannot be allowed to succeed. We'll see about that, Captain Kang said. She turned to Du Hyun. Show me what you found. If the Syndicate wants to play games, they'll learn that humans can play too. And we play to win. As Du Hyun shared his discovery with Captain Kang and her team, he realized that the real trial wasn't the one the Syndicate had planned. It was the test of humanity's ability to face the truth and fight for their right to exist as they were. Commander Yuna Park stood on the bridge of her ship, the Star Claw, watching as more Syndicate vessels appeared around Earth. After Du Hyun's discovery of their true plans, several Syndicate factions had decided to take direct action. They wanted to stop humanity before the trials could even begin. They've completed the blockade, Commander, her first officer reported. No ships can leave Earth's orbit without passing through their defense line. Yuna's scales shifted to a deep blue as she thought. The Syndicate had surrounded Earth with their most powerful ships, but they had made one mistake. They still thought of humans as their failed experiment, not as equals. Call Captain Kang, Yuna ordered. Tell her to prepare her trial team. We're not waiting for their permission anymore. The Star Claw was humanity's newest ship. It worked perfectly with their transformed bodies. The control panels responded to their scales' ability to change color. The navigation systems linked directly with their horns' natural sensing abilities. Even the ship's weapons were designed to work with their claws. All crews to battle stations, Yuna announced over the ship's speakers. Today we show the galaxy what humanity can really do. Her plan was bold but simple. While Captain Kang's team created a distraction near the moon, Yuna would lead a fleet of smaller ships through a gap in the Syndicate's defenses. They had discovered that their horns could sense weak points in enemy shields, another ability the Syndicate hadn't expected. The battle began at dawn. Captain Kang's ships launched first, their engines glowing bright against the dark sky. The Syndicate ships moved to stop them, just as Yuna had hoped. Now, she commanded. The Star Claw shot forward, leading 20 smaller ships through the gap. Yuna's horns tingled, helping her sense the safest path through the enemy fleet. But the Syndicate had prepared for resistance. Their ships fired energy beams that could cut through normal shields. What they didn't know was that human scales could reflect energy weapons. When the beams hit the Star Claw, Yuna's crew used their scales' power to redirect the energy right back at the enemy ships. Impossible. A Syndicate commander's voice came through their communication system. Your ships shouldn't be able to do that. You still don't understand. Yuna replied calmly. We're not just using technology. We're combining it with our natural abilities, something you never thought to try. The battle lasted for hours. Human ships danced between the larger Syndicate vessels, using their smaller size and better maneuverability to avoid attacks. Their claws cut through enemy shields. Their scales reflected deadly beams. Their horns sensed danger before it struck. Finally, the Syndicate fleet began to retreat. They had lost too many ships to maintain the blockade. Earth was free again. As Yuna watched the enemy ships disappear into deep space, she received a message from the Syndicate's Central Council. Your species has proven itself more capable than we imagined. The message said, Perhaps the trials are unnecessary. We should talk. But Yuna knew this wasn't over. They had won the battle. But the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. As her ship turned back toward Earth, she sent a message to Captain Kang. The blockade is broken. Now let's show them what else we can do. Professor Min-Ho Baek spent his days studying ancient alien ruins. After the battle that broke Earth's blockade, the Syndicate had been forced to share their historical records. Now, in a quiet laboratory deep beneath the Seoul Institute, he was about to discover something that would change everything. Look at this, he said to Dr. Park, pointing to symbols on his screen. These aren't Syndicate writings. They're much older. The symbols came from ruins found on a distant planet. They told a story of an ancient race called the Shapers. This species had seeded life throughout the galaxy millions of years ago. But they hadn't just planted random seeds. They had a plan. The Syndicate thought they were the master geneticists of the galaxy, Professor Bake explained to the gathered scientists. But they were just continuing someone else's work, the Shapers' work. Hae-Nul Kim, now working as a researcher herself, studied the ancient text. What does this mean for humans? Professor Bake brought up a new image on the big screen. It showed a DNA pattern that looked exactly like the one humans had developed during their transformation. The Shapers didn't just seed life, he said. They created a grand experiment. Each species was meant to develop in a specific way. And humans were their masterpiece. The room fell silent. Dr. Park stepped forward, his old eyes wide with understanding. So when the Syndicate tried to guide our evolution, they accidentally triggered the changes the Shapers had built into our DNA millions of years ago. Professor Bake finished. We were meant to become this way. The Shapers designed us to be their successors. More evidence appeared as they studied the ancient records. The Shapers had disappeared from the galaxy long ago, but they had left behind a legacy. Humanity's transformation wasn't random. Every scale, horn, and claw had been carefully planned ages ago. But why us? Captain Kang asked when she heard the news. Why did the Shapers choose Earth? Professor Bake showed them more translations. The Shapers believed that true power should develop naturally, not through artificial means. They chose Earth because they saw something special in early humans, our ability to adapt, to change, to grow stronger through challenges. The news spread quickly across Earth and through the galaxy. The Syndicate's council was shocked. They had spent thousands of years trying to copy the Shapers' work, never realizing that the key to it all had been on Earth the whole time. There's more, Professor Bake told Earth's leaders. The Shapers left messages for us. Instructions. They believed that once we transformed, we would be ready to understand their technology. Technology far beyond anything the Syndicate has. Commander Yuna Park, who had joined the meeting, smiled. No wonder some of them wanted to stop us. We're not just their failed experiment. We're what they've been trying to become for thousands of years. But with this discovery came responsibility. The Shapers hadn't just given humans power. They had trusted them to use it wisely. As Professor Bake studied more of the ancient texts, he found warnings too. Power without wisdom would lead to destruction. The Shapers had chosen humans not just for their potential strength, but for their capacity to learn, to grow, and to care for others. We need to share this knowledge, Professor Bake said finally, not just with Earth, but with the whole galaxy. It's time to fulfill the role the Shapers meant for us, not as rulers, but as guides for all species. 5 years after Professor Bake's discovery, Admiral Ji Woo-song stood in the newly built Galactic Assembly on Earth. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from 100 different worlds. Some had scales like humans, others had different features, but all were here for the same reason: to build a new future together. Admiral Song's own scales shimmered with a gentle golden light as she stepped up to speak. She had earned her position not just through military skill, but through her ability to bring people together. Now, she would help shape the galaxy's future. 10 years ago, we were a single planet, just beginning to understand our transformation. She began. Today, we stand as equals among the stars, but we are not here to rule. We are here to share what we have learned. The Syndicate's old system of ranking species by their physical abilities was gone. In its place, Earth had proposed a new way, one based on cooperation and mutual growth. Hae-Nul Kim, now Earth's chief diplomat, had helped design this new system. Each species has its own path. Hae-Nul explained to the assembly. The Shapers knew this. They didn't want us all to be the same. They wanted us to be different, but to work together. That's why they chose humans to guard their legacy. The changes were already showing results. Some species had discovered their own hidden evolutionary paths, guided by the ancient knowledge humans had shared. Others found new ways to combine their natural abilities with technology, just as humans had done. Commander Yuna Park, who had broken the blockade years ago, now led a joint fleet that protected all worlds equally. "Our strength isn't just in our horns, claws, and scales," she often said. "It's in our ability to learn from each other." Dr. Park, now retired but still active in research, watched from his seat as young scientists from different worlds shared their discoveries. The Seoul Institute had become a center for galactic learning, where species from across the stars came to study both the old knowledge of the Shapers and new discoveries. "The trials are different now," Admiral Song continued. "They're not about proving superiority. They're about showing how each species can contribute to our shared future." Even the Syndicate had changed. Many of their worlds had joined the new alliance, bringing their knowledge of genetic science to help understand the Shapers' work. Those who had once tried to control humanity's development now worked alongside them as equals. In the assembly hall, Admiral Song called forth a young human girl. Like all children born after the transformation, she had been born with her scales, horns, and claws. But she had also been born into a galaxy that welcomed her gifts. "This is our promise to the future," Admiral Song said. "We will continue to grow, to change, to become stronger. But we will do it together, helping each other along the way. This is what the Shapers wanted. This is what humanity chooses." As the assembly ended, Newell looked out at the Earth through the hall's giant windows. The planet looked different now, with ships from many worlds coming and going freely. But it was still home, still the place where everything had changed. "We did it," she whispered to herself, touching her scales that had started this journey so long ago. "We found our place among the stars."